station. This is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, I am ready for the event.
Excellent. KFI Radio, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Amy King with KFI's Wake Up Call. How do you hear me?
Amy, this is Nick, and I can hear you loud and clear.
All right. Oh, my gosh. Nick Hague, Colonel Nick Hague, Space Force Guardian, NASA astronaut, live from the International Space Station. We are thrilled to talk to you this morning.
Yeah, it's awesome to be able to connect with you again. I've loved kind of periodically checking in with you leading up to getting up here, and now I'm here, so floating in space.
And I love this because we actually can see you. And just so you know, we're going to put this out on our social media and our website and everything after it's done. And I believe it's also on NASA Plus now. But Nick, I want to go back just a little bit because the last time we talked, you were doing your final training. And then we were supposed to talk to you as you got closer to launch time, but then everything changed because you all had to make accommodations to bring Sonny and Butch home as we know, they went up in June on the Starliner and weren't able to come back on that. So your mission changed. And during that time, you got a promotion and now you're the commander of your mission. So I'd love to go back to launch day as a lot of my friends and I were watching on Earth and watching you launch from Cape Canaveral. And I said, hey, our friend Colonel Nick Hague is right there on that rocket. So there's a couple firsts. You're a mission commander for the first time. Congratulations. You're the first Space Force Guardian to head to the International Space Station. And even the launch location was a first. Can you tell us about that? What was different about this one?
Yeah, for the first time on Space Launch Complex 40, which is on the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station side of the launch complex there at Kennedy Space Center and the Space Force side, we launched humans into space. And so we now have that capability from 2 different launch pads to launch people to the International Space Station using our U.S. providers. But yeah, you point out a lot of interesting firsts. I think the thing that is constant in all of that is change, and really, you know, life for everybody is full of change and surprise. And if you had asked me when we first were talking 6 months ago, if it was just going to end up being Alex and I launching up here to create room to have Butch and Sonny join our crew and do our mission up here, I would have never expected to have that happen. But the ability to do that is really the strength of our training program and the strength of the professional astronaut and cosmonaut corps is we adapt to what life throws at us.
Yeah, and I remember during our earlier conversations, you kept saying we do this plan and then we plan for the things to fail and fall apart so we can come up with contingencies. And it just, on our end, it seems like you guys have taken care of this seamlessly. Can we go back to the launch for just a second? Do you remember as you're sitting there strapped to a rocket, as you have said, getting ready to be hurled into space, as you're counting down to 0, what goes through your mind and what does it feel like when liftoff starts?
Yeah. It's when you're sitting there, you're full of all kinds of emotions, and I think the emotions have gradually changed for me over the course of my launches. The first launch, you really don't know what to expect, and so 5 years ago, that was a lot of adrenaline, a lot of anticipation, a lot of nervousness, not wanting to make a mistake and to be perfect in the moment. As I've progressed, this is the 3rd launch now. I think the difference this time is I kept thinking about all the people that make it possible. You sit there on the launch pad for about 2.5 hours before you ever launch, and there's not much to do, so you think a lot. And I kept thinking about all the people that make it possible for us to do this type of mission. And that's the NASA teams that prepare us, the SpaceX teams that prepare us, the space station program itself, our international partners. There's so many there, but it was even more special sitting on Launch Complex 40 there on the Space Force station, because I felt even more connected to that other part of this gigantic team that makes it possible. And that's the Space Force Guardians around the globe that do some fundamental things that make it possible for us to operate up here, like GPS and debris avoidance and making sure that we stay safe and nothing runs into us while we're orbiting the Earth. So it really makes you feel connected. And that was the difference this time around.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about life on the space station, Colonel Hague. First of all, how many of you are now up there on the space station? I just saw one of your fellow astronauts go floating by behind you.
Yeah, so currently right now we have 11 people on the space station, and today is kind of an exciting day. Crew 8 is preparing to undock, so 4 of our crewmates are getting ready to hop into their capsule and return to Earth and splash down on Friday. And so there's a buzz of anticipation and excitement. I'm happy for them to be able to get back to their families. It's also an exciting time because it's turning over another chapter, another crew handover. They're passing the baton to us, if you will,
yeah.
and that baton passing has been happening continuously for 2.5 decades. And there floats Matt, screaming by, getting ready to go up into his Dragon and continuing packing and getting ready to leave.
I love that. Yeah, and that brings us back to where you were planning for contingencies, because we got a note from NASA yesterday even saying, hey, we're set to go, but things might change because Crew 8 is getting ready to head home, and so we might have to delay. But luckily, we didn't have to, and we get to talk to you today. So I want to ask you some silly things. One, what time is it on the space station?
So we use Greenwich Mean Time, so it's currently 12:42.
Okay. And we were wondering about oxygen and water, because we know that you have to have resupply missions to bring you food and supplies and stuff. Do they have to bring air up there? Do you, somebody just went over your head. Do you have to recycle air? Do you recycle water? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's a fairly closed loop system, meaning we have to recycle everything. And currently, if we focus on water, the station is operating about 98% of the ability to recycle the water that we use. And so even right now, there's air conditioners that are scrubbing this air, and as we perspire moisture, they're condensing that, putting it back into a system that purifies it so we can drink it. And so we're able to recover 98% of the water that we consume, which is important because water is really dense, it's really heavy, and things that are heavy are expensive to launch. It'll be even more important when we start having a sustained presence on the moon to be able to recycle without having to resupply and use our resources that are in place already.
So you kind of have an endless supply now that it's there.
It's pretty endless, but we still rely on cargo vehicles every month or two to bring up some supplies to resupply us. One of the things that we are working on, but we haven't figured out yet, is how do we grow all the food that we need so that we don't have to resupply with food. Currently, we resupply all of our food from the ground, and so we rely on those transport vehicles to bring us up food every couple months to make sure we've got enough to eat.
Yeah. Okay. So is that some of the experiments that you're working on, is growing things on the space station?
Absolutely. While I'm up here, we're going to conduct roughly 200 different experiments, and several of those are focused on how do we grow things in space. How do we grow leafy greens that are fairly easy to grow without having to grow and consume without having to process them too much. We're in the infancy of figuring out how to do that in space, and it's going to be critical going forward that we figure out how to do that in mass.
So it's not quite like Matt Damon on Mars just yet, but you're getting there. If you're just joining us, we're talking to Space Force Guardian Colonel Nick Hague live on the International Space Station. And Colonel Hague, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about living together on the space station, because you said there's 11 of you. A couple are going home very quickly. But do you guys just kind of grab and go? Or for meals, do you sit down and have dinners together? How does that work?
So our work day is roughly 7:30 in the morning till 7:30 in the evening. Before the workday starts and after the workday starts are when we have breakfast and dinner, and those meals tend to be more communal. We all will gather around in the galley. You can see in the back behind me, there's a table back there. That's where our food warmer's at. That's where our little refrigerators are at. So we'd gather in there and just enjoy each other's company while we have breakfast and dinner. Lunch can be a little hit and miss because the day is pretty regimented up here, and everybody has a list of assigned activities, and we're trying to get them all done. And so lunch basically is a grab and go type mentality.
Okay. And let's be honest, is the food good on the space station, or is it not so great?
Yeah, the food is great up here. There's plenty of it. And there's a variety of flavors. This morning I was able to have some coffee with cream and sugar. I had some citrus fruit salad, some strawberries, oatmeal with blueberries in it, and a vegetable quiche. That's what I had this morning. It's delicious. No complaints.
Sounds better than the breakfast that I'm having. Okay, so we had talked earlier that you had been training for spacewalks, and you were doing it in that big old pool, and it was very much like life in space, except for the bubbles that you see in the pool. Have you had a chance to go on a spacewalk since you got to the space station?
So far, no spacewalks.
Okay.
We are planning to do a couple spacewalks later in our expedition. The timing of those depends on a lot of different factors. You were talking about how we might have to adjust real time today just for the undocking of Crew 8. There are a series of major events between now and when we would do the spacewalks that'll drive the final timing. But I look forward to going out the hatch when the opportunity presents itself.
And here's another question for you, Colonel Hague. Does everybody get to do a spacewalk, or do you guys have to do like rock, paper, scissors to see who gets to go out?
Yeah, it's more like rock, paper, scissors. Unfortunately, there's not enough spacewalk. I wish everybody could go out and experience a spacewalk. Sometimes there's an expedition where there's no work that needs to be done on the outside. Spacewalks are a dangerous activity, a risky activity that we take. And so we only go out when we have to. And so the things that compel us to go out there are to fix things that are broken, to kind of maintain our laboratory. The other things we go out to do are put science in place, or to repair science experiments or increase the capabilities of the station. So we don't go out all the time, but when we do, we sure try to enjoy it.
All right. Again, if you're just joining us, we're talking to Space Force Guardian Colonel Nick Hague, who is also a NASA astronaut, just happens to be buzzing around the Earth at about 17,000 miles an hour on the International Space Station. Colonel Hague, how many sunrises and sunsets do you get in a day?
Roughly 16. So about every 45 minutes, if you float over to the cupola windows, you're going to see a sunrise or a sunset.
And so far you've been up there for a few weeks now, what's your favorite thing about being on the International Space Station?
There's a lot of things that you really enjoy, so it's tough for me to say this is my favorite thing. Going over and watching the Earth glide by is unbelievable. In 10 minutes, we can go all the way from Washington State all the way down to the tip of the Florida Peninsula and Key West and see the entire U.S. glide by. And you can look down with your naked eye and you can see the city roads and buildings, and it feels so close, even though you're 250 miles away. It's awe-inspiring to have that perspective. But when you come back inside, it's fun to be able to do tricks and flips and be upside down and continue to talk, and so that never gets old. We have our own little competition of who can do as many flips without wrecking into something or transit the lab in the most dynamic way. But I think the singular most favorite thing I like doing up here is doing things with other humans. that shared experience of whether we're competing and doing zero-G gymnastics or whether we're both looking out the window, that shared experience makes it even more special.
Okay, then another quick question, and we're running out of time, so I got to try to get a couple in there. But you were just doing some flips, and we were talking, and I've been thinking about zero gravity, and I was like, well, what does it feel like if you're upside down in space? Do you even know if you're upside down?
If I close my eyes and I flip upside down, I can't tell I'm upside down. So the only way we can decide which way is up and which way is down is visually. And for the most part, it really doesn't make any difference inside the station. We use every surface. So this lab is covered with wires, and it's covered with, Sunny just passed underneath me, it's covered with experiments on each side and computers and cameras, and so we tend to not touch anything, just these blue handrails that I end up grabbing on. So it's up, down, makes no difference.
Well, you are up there, and we are so excited to be able to talk to you, Colonel Nick Hague. We know you got to go because you got experiments to do, and you got to help some people pack to get home. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you on the International Space Station. Parting words?
Yeah, Amy, I just want to say thank you for talking with me over the past 6 to, I think, almost 8 months now, and helping me share this experience. The space flight and the human exploration of space is so important. It's so life-changing, and anybody that has the dream of getting involved with it, I urge them to just chase that passion. There is room for everyone as we explore deeper into space.
Thank you again, Colonel Nick Hague, live from the International Space Station. Ooh, and we did it just when we were supposed to. We had at 5:52, and it's 5:52, and he is off and doing his thing. Wow, what a treat. And, we've talked to him a few times. And in fact, if you want
Station, this is Houston ACR. Thank you. That concludes our event.
Thank you to all participants with KFI Radio Station. We are now resuming operational audio communications.